I almost consider this a betrayal, sinning a video from the channel that inspired me to make my Everything Right and Wrong with series, but of course, no channel is without sin. And I can hear the comments already. CinemaSins is just satire, it's supposed to be funny. Sure, but whether or not I believe CinemaSins is actually funny or not anymore aside, Jeremy's criticisms are getting pretty ridiculous, and there's nothing wrong with a bit of healthy criticism. And seeing as people will likely come into the comments using the same old "it's just satire" defense, fuck it, this video is just satire, it's supposed to be funny. Guess what? I'm immune to all criticism now.
I'm a comic book, I'm a cereal, did a Christmas album.
At this point, can we make meta humor a sin? Because it feels like we should be able to.
No, meta humor is good shit.
Sony headphones is only the first of many Sony product placements in this otherwise artistically original film.
Sure, it's a Sony movie, but the product placement is used to show differences between each universe, such as trucks in this universe being Red X trucks. Actually, both Sony and Red X in the same universe. See, that was worth sinning, maybe?
Look, I get this is the style of animation that the movie is using to make it stand out, feel more authentically like a comic book or whatever. But that doesn't make it any less irritating that the first time I saw this, I spent 20 minutes of the movie trying to figure out if it was on purpose, or if the theater employees were too busy jerking off in people's popcorn to pay attention to the presentation of the film. And even when I realized it was on purpose, I then spent 20 more minutes trying to figure out why my popcorn tasted a little extra salty.
Things look better in motion than they do when you play them at a literal frame a second. I wait the day they start sending animation smears because they look odd when you pause on them.
I want to hear it.
You want to hear
I
me
love
say
you, Dad.
Hilarious moment, and it shows how much he loves Miles. But it also devastates Miles' reputation at this school.
This is one of CinemaSins' biggest problems at the moment. There's no sin to be had here. You've just pointed out what happens in this scene and added a sin because why the fuck not? If you'd said something like parent embarrassing their child in front of half of the school cliche, at least there'd be something for the audience to acknowledge.
What is up with these cones in this unused closest lane? People are dropping kids off in lane 2, outside the cones. Are we just shutting down lanes of traffic this morning because it goes near a school?
I've never been to New York, but apparently this is quite a common thing.
Since we find out this Gwen Stacy is from another universe, how exactly did she get into this prestigious private school? It doesn't factor in at all to her mission or reason for being there. Why would she even try to get in?
How is a question worth asking, I guess, but why is clearly explained later on. Gwen's spider sense drew her to this school. You even sin this particular fact later on. You know, you can go back and rewrite sins, right?
Find that girl, we walk up to her and be like, hey.
You serious, Uncle Aaron?
Do not do this. This is tragically bad advice.
I guess this is one of those scenes that people will point to demonstrate that CinemaSins is supposed to be satirical. And I will cock my head to the side like a confused puppy and ask, are you sure about that?
Miles' roommate apparently needs 2 PC screens, a separate laptop, and a phone, all operating at once, at like 3 in the morning.
So you're telling me he's a YouTuber?
I'm Gwenda.
Why wouldn't she just say her name was Gwen, or whatever name she used to get into this school? Movie not being able to resist a moment, this sitcom deserves a sin.
A multitude of potential reasons. Upon meeting Miles, Gwen didn't want to reveal her name yet, as she may have just realized that's why her spider sense drew her here. And this fact is hinted at a minute later as she tells Miles to relax when his hand gets stuck to her hair. The same advice Peter B. Parker gives Miles later on. Maybe I'm reaching, but I don't know. There's also the fact that there may already be a Gwen Stacy in this universe, and she doesn't want to risk causing any complications just yet.
How exactly did he get all of Gwen's hair from the previous shot off of his hand?
A razor? Some sort of hair removal thingamajig? Maybe once Miles calmed down, his hands were no longer sticky?
Narcs.
Okay. At least they had the decency to remove a sin for this. Legitimately one of the funniest scenes I've seen in ages.
Let me tell you the good news. We don't need the monitor.
They told me about the visuals, they told me about the voice work, they even told me about the fresh original story, but they did not prepare me for how funny this was gonna be, and that's a sin for they.
Wait, did you just add a sin because it's a funnier movie than you expected? Shouldn't, I mean, guys, yeah, your channel is focused on unnecessary nitpicking, but you can take sins off whenever it calls for it, you know? This is, oh boy, this is taking a lot to process.
Is there something you want to say to me?
How come he only ever glitches when it's super inconvenient or when he's talking about glitching?
Fair, but that's probably the joke.
Long after the dust has settled and the newness is worn off, people will still regard this film as fucking fantastic. But I personally will still be trying to point out to people how it's like 25% expositional character introductions, because I'm a dickhead.
At least he knows he's a dickhead. But what did you expect? The character introductions are short enough that we get an understanding of the character, but not so long as to interrupt the movie's pacing. Without them though, we'd have a small collection of spider people with no introductions and no reason to care or be invested.
The flashbacks of Kingpin's loved ones, which is also just another rapid-fire exposition dump in a movie full of them, would get more emotions out of me if they dialed back a bit on the Kingpin is comically large and his head is located where most folks' sternums would be.
You don't have to have a relatively normal looking character to be able to get your audience to feel something for your characters. If we're going off that logic, things like Inside Out, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, and even Pokemon Mystery Dungeon would have no impact. Oh man, it's so sad how the player character is erased from existence. But they were a Totodile and they look funny, so oh well.
Sometimes I let matches burn down to my fingertips just to feel something, anything.
This Noir, Penny, Ham introduction sequence feels like one of those SNL sketches where they do celebrity impressions and give us fake auditions for famous movies.
Again, that's the joke. Maybe not specifically SNL sketches, but still.
Look, I made a promise, so I have to keep it.
Promises to dead people aren't all that important, man. I promised my grandfather that I would never forget him, but I already don't remember his name. I think it was Grandpa. See, no one cares.
I think I'm in the minority that kind of like this little bit of dark humor, but I can see how it'd be off-putting or jarring to some. Either way, show respect to your loved ones, kids.
Can you swing and flip with the grace of a trained dancer?
Do your ears hang low? Do they wobble to and fro? Can you tie them in a knot? Can you tie them in a bow?
What?
Come on, Miles, get up! You need to be more honest with yourself about this.
After a test that lasted less than 2 minutes? At least give him a day. Jesus.
The Kingpin Super Collider goes off in like a day. They don't really have the time.
This movie rules, but literally everything in it is happening too fast.
Oh, is the movie too fast for the big baby?
Does every incarnation of Spider-Man have to lose a beloved uncle?
Fair, but Aaron's death is likely an intentional parallel or callback.
What about MJ?
Well, that new documentary really did a number on his popularity. And honestly, you meant Mary Jane, right? Well, several states have legalized it, and 24 have made it legal for medicinal purposes. But there's still a long way to— you meant Mary Jane the person, didn't you?
Haha, overly long weird joke.
All these spider dicks teaming up to prevent Miles from taking part in the climax because they want to protect him? Assholes!
All these spider dicks teaming up to prevent the inexperienced Miles from getting involved in the fight because he's clearly too inexperienced? Assholes.
Are they still taking the bus just for comedy now?
Yeah, probably. Other potential reasons include eyes in the sky alerting the Kingpin of any spider people homing in on the party.
This. One of the movie's only problems is sometimes leaving viewers with a bad case of what the f just happened-itis.
Miles grabs Gwen, shoots Webb, Peter B grabs it. That's what the fuck just happened. It's really not that hard to follow.
At some point, this movie just said, f you, logic and physics, and wants me to just roll with it. And for the most part, I can. Still a sin, but it's a fun sin.
They're in the middle of a reality-bending explosion caused by the Super Collider. Physics don't really apply at the moment.
Miles letting go of Peter here after both have finally understood their purpose? It won't be, but that was the superhero moment. Not whatever ass-beating Miles does after this.
This is Peter's superhero moment, not Miles. His superhero moment is him getting back up after being beaten, demonstrated multiple times by his actions throughout the movie. Basic theming, really.
Like most superhero films, the final few minutes turn into one big animated ball of nonsense.
It's almost like the end of the film needs a big bombastic fight to bring it to its conclusion.
This movie rules. Everyone that worked on it deserves mention. But this movie has 10 minutes of credits. That's excessive, especially when the movie is going to put an after-credits scene at the end.
This film has 177 animators. They deserve all the credit they can get, especially when they turn the credits into this visual masterpiece. In the end, it's perhaps hypocritical of me to send CinemaSins for these things when I've been guilty of some of this in the past, even as recently as Everything Right and Wrong with Jack 2. But what matters, to me at least, is context and understanding. If I'd sinned Into the Spider-Verse, I would have sinned Uncle Aaron's death because it's somewhat of a cliche, but then I would have slapped a win on the counter because of the emotional impact of the scene and the parallels between his death and that of Uncle Ben's. I would have also sinned Gwen calling herself Gwanda because while covering her name up may have been a good idea, she never revealed her last name. Gwen is a common enough name that she could get away with telling Miles her name is Gwen. CinemaSins does not do this and instead chalks the scene up to haha what is this a sitcom lol instead of bothering to look any deeper. There's nothing wrong with pointing out cliches, mistakes, or whatever else, and when they sin Into the Spider-Verse for
character insists they can't do a thing over and over only to ultimately do that very thing cliche. There is a meat to eat on both sides of this street. That password is way longer than the one Liv typed in a second ago.
Then I don't have an issue. But when you release 2 videos in this format almost every week, you don't get as much time to actually think about what you're writing, and as such, sins come across as extremely surface level criticism or needlessly negative, because we gotta find something to sin. This results in sins that are gonna piss people off because there's no thought put into them. It also doesn't help that Jeremy claims that CinemaSins is just satire, but then proceeds to say, we're not reviewers, we're assholes. That distinction is also what upsets some people, because it's supposed to be funny, at least in its current iteration, but it comes off as critical and makes the guys at CinemaSins look kind of dishonest. I do a lot of the shit CinemaSins is guilty of. I have jokey sins, I have sins that are an actual critique, but I'm honest about it. I don't say it's one thing or the other because it's not, it's both. Just like CinemaSins videos used to be and kind of still are. somewhat, except for when their sins are blatantly wrong. But they're content with hiding behind a big barricade that says, it's supposed to be funny, guys! I like the CinemaSins format, but they just use it to complain that Emma Watson isn't old enough to be hot yet, or sin movies for reasons that are pedantic or even entirely incorrect. I won't go as far as denouncing them as some other channels have, because I still enjoy them on the odd occasion. And they are going to make mistakes, as well as sins that people don't agree on because everyone perceives a piece of media differently. But they can do better. So much better. I'm JXC CinemaSins, and I'll see you next time.
I'm a dickhead.
Hey lads, hope you don't mind the stopgap in between now and the dangerous driving review. I kind of felt compelled to make this video because CinemaSins finally made a more recent video on a movie I'd actually seen, because I'm not much of a movie person really, I haven't seen many movies. So I finally got the chance to see whether newer CinemaSins is actually any better or worse than older CinemaSins, and after watching it, yeah, kind of felt like making this video. But don't get used to this sort of thing, it's just a little stopgap between now and the upcoming Dangerous Driving review and Everything Right and Wrong with Jack 3. Putting it out there though, if you guys do have any criticisms for the Everything Right and Wrong with format that I'm currently using, then don't hesitate, you know, comment at me, message me on Twitter, tweet at me, whatever else, because I'm open to criticism, you know, and if I'm gonna sit here and criticize the format that I have pretty much stolen, then I would think that instead of just copying it wholesale like I did with the original Everything Wrong with Ratchet & Clank, that I should attempt to make it better. Which is what I'm hoping that I've been doing by, like, for example, introducing the wing counter. I know I've still got a lot to work on with that. It's actually very easy to point out sins and quite a lot harder to point out wins without sounding like, wow, this part is cool. Wow, that part is cool. But even things like how I used to use running CinemaSins gags, like I still use a couple. I still use things like That's Racist. I still use Discount X. And I would like to be able to move away from that. Like, running gags are fine. I guess I just gotta come up with my own. But yeah, if you guys have got any criticisms, leave them down in the comments below, tweet at me, whatever else. And I will, at the very least, take it into consideration, but likely respond as well. Whatever, I'm too lazy to set up my recording space again. This is probably going to sound like shit. Anyway, thank you to the Keyboard Smash tier, all the $5 patrons. Thank you to Mitchell Reese, Nation McAltal, Henry Beach, Tabri Sadiq, Olivia, Keegan Smith, Diablo5564, Tyler Cross, Duncan Austin, Pastor Boy, Gabba Scabba, Leo Alex 50, Heat Hoot Sky, Global Truncation Era, Laurent LaCroix, Sheepy, Loomis Dubus, Scubo, Chatterestop, Gepner Khan, Cooper James Price, Sebastian Orbe, Nathaniel Forrest, Travis Miranda, Thomas Hart, Lazaro Dave, The Ruby Red Rose, and Philip Elk. Thank you guys for making these dumb videos possible.